Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard with your host, Bill Stierle. And you know, Bill, I'm glad I've had a couple days before we're recording this episode from Sunday this past week, because I was watching a program, Meet the Press, that I tend to watch, I would say more often than not, most Sundays. And I've watched it for a long time, back when Tim Russert, I think, was the moderator and the host. Was probably when I first started watching it. And of course, he died tragically. And then there have been a couple other people. And today, the host is Chuck Todd. Mm-hmm. And he interviewed Vice President Mike Pence on Sunday.
Right.
And I got so frustrated and downright mad, actually, watching this interview, that I actually decided to send an email to Chuck Todd. And
you sent one? You sent an email to him?
I sent an email to him.
Look out.
I mean, I hope it gets to him. Obviously, I don't know if it actually will, but I Googled, email Chuck Todd, NBC News, and got a form that I guess is used for feedback to any of their news anchors and news programs.
Sure.
But I filled it out.
But you followed the thread. You went in to express yourself. So you're kind of angry, and your need for respect or expression or being heard wasn't met, and you kind of went after it. You said, I got to relate. Okay, so you have us all curious now. So you're writing this thing, and clearly, Chuck Todd's did not kind of meet your needs all of a sudden. He was pretty, it really pushed your buttons, I should say.
It really did. And it really came from the previous episode we recorded, and some of that discussion about, journalists in particular in the press corps at the White House needing to improve their skills and change their approach at how they question. We were talking about questioning President Trump to, rather than just keep peppering him with questions that are direct questions to try to get at the truth, because it doesn't work, but, how they could get some skills and arrive at truth and maybe get President Trump out of, the way and get to maybe Fauci, I think we talked about, and to get some, truth there. And so anyway, all this stuff was on my mind. And here is Chuck Todd trying to interview the vice president and talk with him about, the reality of, for instance, testing kits in the United States for COVID-19. And
so the exasperation was building up in your body because there wasn't really a pursuant of truth. There was a kind of a pursuant of facts, which the person wasn't going to give you anyways. And so he's trying to, literally run into this wall and figuring out how many ways he can put his, bang his head on the different part of the wall. And Pence is just going like, I'm sorry, I'm a wall,
Right.
So,
it was the question was not going to be answered as it was asked, for sure. And that became obvious in the first minute of this interview. And Chuck Todd was, disappointingly powerless to keep this interview on any kind of productive track. And what he did was gave the vice president way too much leeway in just going on and on, saying whatever he wanted. And to me, I was like, Chuck, this is your show. You're the host. You're the moderator.
Right, sure.
And you're allowing the vice president to give a nationally televised address, and
Oh,
you're not
so
holding him accountable in any way to respect you, that this is your show, that there's supposed to be
sure.
any kind of, ability for you to ask him questions, and he would not stop him. And it got to the point where I'm like yelling at the TV at Chuck Todd.
Oh my gosh, that's well, the feeling of exasperation and mad and angry and aggravated are all boiling up inside your body because the need for skill and awareness that Chuck Todd wasn't showing. He didn't have the skills to be able to number one, get the vice president to give the viewing audience, Chuck's viewing audience, the truth that Chuck thought that it would be valuable. But again, he's trying to be nice, and all of a sudden, Pence has just got a free, monologue going on that is, a common thread that kind of Mike Pence does. He kind of does the "that's not true" thing. That's not what he was doing, and so very, very challenging for you at that moment. So what would have met your need for skill? What would have been or what did you do then? I mean, you're writing this email,
Well,
so
I watched the whole show, and interestingly, I watched the contrast between, because the way they do things typically in Meet the Press is that Chuck will interview one or two or sometimes even three
sure,
people in politics early in the show, and then he'll have a panel, of semi-regular, um,
yeah,
guests, like somebody from the Washington Post, and he has people from both sides, not just your more left-leaning publications, but your more
sure,
right-leaning publications. Or he tries to have a balance of people that have different perspectives, some of them more liberal, some of them more conservative, and he did this day as well. And the interesting thing I realized by the end of the show, because when he's conducting the panel and he's asking each of the panelists usually a different question, that's all are built around the same, theme of whatever is, newsworthy that week. The panelists, whether they agree with him or disagree with him, or they have very differing opinions from each other, they all have mutual respect for each other, these panelists.
right, right,
And they also have respect for the forum and the format that is this Meet the Press panel. So they know that they're going to speak on something for a relatively short period of time, a minute or two, and then, they sort of hand it back to Chuck. And I realized by the end of this episode, Chuck, it seemed to be conducting his interview with Mike Pence in a similar manner that he conducts the panel. The
oh, I
difference
see.
is the panelists respect the forum, and they don't try to hijack the whole thing. And Chuck doesn't have to work that hard in order to be the moderator and to drive the direction of the discussion. And I he may have the necessary skills to do that on the panel, but what was then abundantly clear was he really is not a very skilled journalist in terms of interviewing someone and, giving
Well,
them.
that's trying to put their monologue together. They're trying to just do their talking points. They're trying to get their message out so their message sticks, and they're not interested in really being in a respectful banter between you and them. They're just holding the position and going like, "Well, I'm the vice president. I'm going to say things the way I want to. You can ask me any question I want, but basically, you know, I am talking inside this box, inside this bubble, so that people who are in agreement with me or agreement with the president that I'm serving, are going to stay or remain loyal. I'm not going to embarrass my president. I am not going to disclose the flaws of my presidents openly. It's kind of, it's
Well,
kind of a yeah.
he was never gonna say any, he was never gonna agree with Chuck. He was never gonna say anything negative. He was gonna completely try to give President Trump credit and acknowledgement and praise for handling this situation. And Chuck was just unable to, to me it was just lack of skills. That's what we've talked about. He did not
Yeah,
have
the
the
skills. Yeah.
skills to give Mike Pence the amount of respect and acknowledgement he would need to be able to say yes to anything, because he never said yes to anything. He immediately just went off on, the talking points and what we're
Right.
doing and what we've done is, and
Right.
through President Trump's leadership, this is what we've done. And
Yeah.
it's all like, why do you keep saying that? Because that has nothing to do with the question that was asked. And of course, given an open forum, he's just going to be like a fish, being let
Yeah.
go from a net, and he's gonna boom, he's gonna swim and run off in open water, which is really, or swim off in open water, and that's really
Yeah.
what he did. So anyway, I'm getting a
His
little
style,
PTSD
that
now.
style, that style of leadership. I mean, well, you're going to feel it. I mean, the feeling of exasperated and angry and aggravated are going to be in your body because, I mean, over the times you and I've been together, you can see how truth can be purchased and hijacked by certain languaging patterns. So your sensitivity is high. So you're going like, well, this is not any skill. This is, hey, listen, I'm talking about skill over here and it's not showing up over here. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like the curtain has been, more pulled back for you than others. You're going like, I can't take this. I've got to like, scream at the TV and then write an email to say, this did not go well. And I didn't, I did not appreciate what you were doing. And that, and that's the exasperating things. And, well, welcome to my world is the first point. And then the second thing is that is, where do we get and how do we move forward, when we're saturated in, a narrative that is just trying to get self-promotion, marketing, and sales style communication, to, be in our politics. It's like, I know you got to sell it, but you are selling us, a product that is not in alignment with truth. And that's the way I also look at it, is that the interviewer does not know that they're being just a foil for this person to sell the audience behind them, or that's following them. So Chuck Todd could say, well, what do you think about monkeys eating glue? And he could ask a completely unrelated question and that Pence would still give him the same answer. Well, the president was really good about glue making. He is the best glue maker ever. I mean, it doesn't matter, um, the question that Todd's asking, because if it's not framed in an empathetic way, there's no way that Pence is going to get off script. Just like no way. And we have talked about this before, is like his Pence's job is three sentences: a sentence of reward, this is a great leader; a sentence of anticipation, there's something that's coming that you won't believe, that's great and wonderful; a sentence of uncertainty, we're not sure when it's going to show up. That's it. It is a 3 formula response. And Chuck is going like, well, what about the ventilators? The listener has already heard the ventilators are coming. What's the big deal? It's like,
Right. Well, Chuck is like, well, isn't it basically, I'm paraphrasing, but asking a question like, isn't it true that if the administration had responded sooner to provide more testing? He was really focused on this testing thing because Trump in the last week has said that testing isn't the responsibility of the federal government, it's the responsibility of the states. And then at the same time, he says, we've done the best job in testing and getting tests out there. I mean, so he actually contradicts himself. So Chuck Todd was focused on that whole side of things. and
Right.
trying to say, isn't it true that if the administration had responded sooner and more people had been tested sooner, that fewer people would have died today, and all this stuff. And Pence just goes into, again,
Monologue.
not answering the question, and
Mhm.
monologue, and all the talking points that are dancing all around it and not
Right.
really helpful. And it's so, well, what really was illuminated to me, another important point illuminated to me in this experience, was that, I think a lot of us that watch these daily coronavirus briefings of the president speaking know that, I think all too often we think, well, that's the president. That's the way he does things. That's his style. He's always trying to, twist everything to give himself praise and all this stuff. But you know what? It isn't just the president who does that. Mike Pence here in this situation did that as much as any experienced politician would do. Now, Pence might be a less combative guy, a more cordial guy, show some mutual respect more than the president, where he won't
Sure.
say, you're a terrible journalist, or, shame and blame and criticize you as the questioner. But it's still pointed out to me that a certain skill is needed, and it doesn't matter whether you're interviewing President Trump or anybody else who's on the team.
It's a blind spot. Clearly,
Yeah,
the blind spot is really, it's glaring because, see, even if you're interviewing a CEO of a company that they made a major mistake about something, at least they've got some PR people around them to spin a message in a direction, right?
right.
This group does not have that level of strength. So what happens is they're just picking a much more of a narrow sales narrative of, just give him a reward, just give him some anticipation, and just give him some uncertainty, and walk away and leave a vacuum, because there's always a vacuum at the end of the interview. You go like, I am empty. I don't know what I need, but I am so starving for information. I have to watch again. And that's the Trump show. I've got to keep watching. I mean, over the years, it's all about the hook at the end of each segment in order to get them to come back for commercial. And the commercial does the same thing, get them to be empty about the thing they're selling about. So they have to go to the store and buy the thing. So we are in a capitalist sales narrative that, when done with not the level of truth or the level of integrity, and did Obama sell things? Yes, he sold all kinds of things, but it had to do a little bit more towards the public interest versus the private interest. And this small little subtle shift here is a private interest. We're doing it this way so we can optimize the best price point for ventilators. We can optimize the best price point for masks. We can optimize and keep the scarcity high enough so they can get the highest price point. That is not in the public good. And you can see my voice is rising, because that just distinction, Tom, it's different when you have somebody running government from a capitalist viewpoint and somebody running it from a public service standpoint. Bidding, we're having governors bid on ventilators and masks and competing with each other in a capitalist way. That is horrifying, that they've got to fight through that. It's like, that's not public service. That is, competitive and
Right. Well, and so that, I think that's a really good point, Bill. You just illuminated it. We don't have a public servant in the
no,
Oval Office. We
no,
don't.
no,
We
no.
have a salesman, a marketer, a brander, and a capitalist
Right.
in the Oval Office. And that's a stark contrast
Yeah.
to a lot of other leaders in the world. And actually, Bill, that is a great place to pivot a little bit to another article that I think you and I both read since our
Hmm.
last time
Sure, sure.
in the Atlantic about New Zealand's prime minister, who
Right,
is a woman. Her name
right,
is Jacinda Ardern,
right,
39 years old, so fairly young, prime
right.
minister of this country in the southern hemisphere. And the article says New Zealand's prime minister may be the most effective leader on the planet. A very interesting, catchy headline. And obviously, we've got
Sure.
a link to the article in the blog post at purchasingtruth.com. So if anybody wants to check
Awesome.
it out, but it really shows how she is. And they actually say it. When I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to send this article to you, Bill, because they talk about how she approaches what she does, how she speaks to her country, how she leads her country with empathy.
Yes.
She
Right.
leads with empathy. She
Yeah.
doesn't
Right.
just preach to them, she's standing with them.
With them. Hmm.
And it is the,
Yeah.
there's a high, what it does is it breeds a high level of trust
Right.
and confidence in her among her citizens because of the empathy.
Right.
And
Right.
it is just the polar opposite of what we're experiencing in the United States with our leader.
Yeah. Yeah. The good part about that article too is that when somebody as the manifestation of empathy shows up, it's the same thing with Chuck Todd using empathy on Pence with his answers. Ask his question. Ask the respond to Pence with empathy for his answer. So you would like us to get excited about the president and all the good things he's doing. Is that correct? Pence has to say yes to that. So sounds like that really you like the audience or our audience to hear that there has been, a great effort being put forth and you and the administration are doing everything you can to get ventilators to the places that need it. Is that correct? Yeah. So it's you're looking to be positive about things. See, this is Chuck Todd using empathy. So the New Zealand leader is using empathy to build engagement. And Chuck Todd could use empathy to build engagement. And the New Zealand prime minister is saying, listen, I take my kids to the park. I've taken my kids to the park in the past, and they aren't liking it right now that they're at home with me and they want to go to the park. But right now, what we're doing is we're trying to get the need for safety met. And wouldn't it be a good idea for a little while until we could get ahead of this to make sure that safety takes place? And we're going to do everything we can to protect you guys out there. See, immediately she's saying, I've got your back.
Yes.
She's immediately saying, I got your back. I am going for 5 specific needs. I'm going for protection, safety. I'm demonstrating care. I am going to be cooperative. I'm interested in the best process to get there for those things. And I am empathizing for what you're going through because this is the sacrifices that I'm making. And here's the sacrifices that you're making. And kind of asking you to do some of the things that I'm doing. And yeah, it's going to be tough and it's not going to be perfect. And she said it's not going to be perfect. And all of them, that's good. That's good truth. But she's getting truth to move in a straight line, not this mountain road that we don't know the next time we might drive off the cliff because there's no guardrails around the president or the vice president. There's no guardrails. There's nothing to hone in the tweet or the next comment or the next misstep because they're trying to run something thin in the middle of a crisis. Yeah, it's really exasperating. You can hear it in my voice. Exasperating because my need for truth isn't met, and then frustration because my need for skill isn't met, and then, well, of course, you know, disheartened about awareness. Is like you and I are talking about something that most of the world doesn't really fully know. They've got a little inklings of what the application of empathy is in language, but really actually not too much. So it's really a hard fight.
It really is a hard fight, and I feel like, you know, there's and the other the frustration is there is this propaganda machine out there called Fox News that is very skilled at messaging and very skilled at, like the whole marketing thing, and people's lives
Are
are
being
at
lost over it.
stake. They
No,
really
it's worse.
are.
They're being lost over it. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's just some scary honesty. People are lost over it because um, if you're rebelling and activating, I mean, you and I have done an episode on the shame cycle, but this is actually what the shame cycle is I am going to be in control about something, and send a message of control. I can't wait to open up the country for business. And you start that open, 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 and people say open, open, open. And the answer is, well, why is my state not opening? Well, because we have a Democratic governor.
Ugh.
So we're going to rebel against the Democratic governor. See, that's a shame movement, rebellion. Now, the release part of it is when the consequence comes up. The embarrassing consequence comes up. Oh my gosh, I just got my neighbor sick. Oh my gosh, so-and-so died and we didn't know it yet. Let's take another pandemic here, or disease, AIDS. When AIDS was running through America, Ronald Reagan did the same thing. Downplay, not a big thing. So what is this disease? Different time, I know, different person, I know, but guess what? Same energy of, we're not funding it because our voters don't like gay people. I mean, just to do a micro summation of it.
No,
Our voters
it's a fair
don't,
assessment.
we don't, this is the scourge, and that's a disease that affects those people. But it was a sexually transmitted disease. As soon as we got other faces on the disease, and as soon as we found out it was in the blood supply, oh my gosh,
Right.
now all of
No,
a
I
sudden
agree.
there was other people. Now all of a sudden, the pivot really actually took place. And I actually posted something on my internet, on my Facebook page about this, is that a video about this is somebody recently put a video of all the famous / semi-famous people that have died from the disease, right? And they put a video together, right?
Okay.
And I watched the video and I go, these are famous people. And my brain went to, oh, not famous enough. Not like Rock Hudson, because as soon as Rock Hudson got things, Reagan pivoted then. He goes, wait a minute, my friend just is sick and is going to get died, because it was his friend. So until it hits home, until it gets close.
So you mean unless someone in President Trump's inner circle gets it and dies,
right.
or somebody he respects, like
That's
if
right.
Rush Limbaugh died from it,
then
Trump would say, okay, this is real.
What?
This is
Wait,
serious.
what? How? Because he can't make it up, because it's his guy.
Yeah.
It goes back to the flat earth mindset that we talked about a few episodes ago, is that they can only see what they see. It's like, and not, and I mean,
Oh, could
there's
you
no
imagine if Hannity got it? Could you
right.
imagine if Hannity
Yeah.
got it? And then, you know, have you've seen, like, let's take an example from another news organization. Chris Cuomo got it.
Chris
And
Cuomo got it
he's
right.
been still doing his show from home as much as he can while he's ill with coronavirus, and even interviewing his brother, the governor of New York. Can
Right.
you imagine if Hannity had it and then Hannity was interviewing Trump from home? This would be entirely different. I don't know if you
That's
would
right.
call it empathy. I don't know. I don't think it's empathy, because I don't think the president really has
Empathetic.
that bone in his body, if you will.
Yeah.
I think that, though, he would have the different perspective, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. The perspective is it becomes a reality, because the bubble wrap and the bubble that it's not just bubble wrap that's around the president. Nobody tells him anything that's bad, but it's also the distancing bubble around the experience. It's very, very challenging to put a positive spin on. I think we're up to 45,000 people, Americans that have died.
Yes, we
You
are.
can't positive spin that. There's not a positive spin. You got to go through it
Oh, but
and more and
they try to
mourn.
proportionalize it. Have you seen all these posts about, well, do
So
you
they
know
try.
this many people die from the flu every year? And do you know this many people die from heart attacks
Yes.
every year? Have you seen some of that
Yeah.
proportionalization, trying to minimize
Oh yeah.
why are
Yeah.
we ruining our economy over this one?
This one, right? Yeah. The
Uh,
comparisons narrative over this. It's like, hey, people die all day, every day, and the answer is not if they don't have to, right?
Right. Well, there's that. And there's also the fact that, well, if we just, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Sweden, for instance, who's not doing any lockdown. I mean, they're sort of this experiment that is actually, as I understand it, starting to turn for the worse.
Yeah, yeah, they're
It's
gonna,
not,
they're gonna,
it's
they're
not
gonna,
over yet. But the point
yeah, they're
is,
gonna
you
hit
know,
their
if we don't
numbers.
do this, then
Yeah,
we are going to overwhelm our hospital system. We already are to an extent. But I mean, if we didn't do this, anybody who has, you know, any other kind of ailment, a heart attack, a stroke, um, a needs immediate gallbladder surgery or
right,
appendicitis surgery or all that, they're going to call 911 to get help, and no one's going to come because the system is overwhelmed, right? I mean,
correct.
there's all sorts of other issues here. It isn't just the number of deaths. While, you know, some of those comparisons are interesting to look at for sure and to understand perspective, but I also think it's far too early. You're talking about averages of certain kinds of deaths people are putting out there. There are annual numbers of deaths, and we haven't even been through a whole year with coronavirus yet. I mean, we've been through what, 3 months here in the United States? I mean, I guess since the first case, maybe, you know, 4 months in the United
Yeah,
States.
January, and so really, the January piece. Um, the first case is not the same as the first infection. So the first case is when somebody identified it. That's the anchor. Then, but there was many people infected at that same time, swirling throughout the nation, specifically in New York City.
Yes.
So um and it hit people hard. They had to stay home, I mean, because they were so sick, right? And some of them
Sure.
went to the hospital and went through that experience. And it's exasperating because we're still needing trust, and we're still needing certainty. And we're not going to really fully get trust and certainty both together unless two parts of the equation are done. That there is a proactive ability, not reactive, proactive ability to test, and a teams, proactive contact tracing teams that descend upon that person that's been tested. The person gets tested, they're positive. Who have you talked to in the last 14 days? In the last month? Who have you talked to?
Who have
When did
I
you talk? No,
talked
I'm
to?
just saying
Oh, you're
this is the
asking the contact
contacting,
tracing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the contract tracing. You ask the person that's infected, who have you talked to in the last 14 days? Who have you? We got to find out where the vector is going. Where
And where
who'd
have you
you?
been? Have you
Where
gone
have you
out to the
been?
grocery store? Did you wear a mask when you did? You know,
Yeah.
all these
What
things.
grocery store did you go to? And then you could do it discreetly or you can do it overtly if you want to. But then there's a team of people that comes in and cleans up that grocery store. And it could open the next day or it could not open the next day, depending on if it met the need for cleanliness. How many people to intensively clean a grocery store in masks and garb so they don't get sick? They come in and take care of this entire environment. Does the public need to see it? Partly. Partly they do. They need to have certainty and trust that you're protecting them. The psychological damage is done. That's the hardest part about this, is that who wants to go to a restaurant right now? And I'm not doom and glooming this,
Oh,
because how are
so
you going to do that?
that's a good point, Bill. And boy, there's so many things in my mind that we could go on and talk about, but you just reminded me and illuminated a really good one. So at the same time all this is going on, because of the the majority of Americans staying home, and our borders are shut down, the airlines are not flying maybe 10% of what they were before.
Yeah, tops. Yeah,
And stick with me here because there's
sure.
a point to this, but the oil market has just
Yes,
dropped like a rock. In fact, it's gone subterranean. Yesterday I was
that's right.
watching
That's the economy piece.
the
Yeah, yeah.
the oil futures for May, yesterday, from when we're recording this, we're at negative $36 a barrel. Okay. And I had to actually get a little education from my father in law, who understands the oil industry very well, to understand oil futures can go negative. Okay. Well, tell me about that. So I learned a little bit about that. But the
Yeah.
point,
Well, they're
though,
paying
is
people. They're paying people to take. They're paying people to take this barrel away from them because they have no place to store it.
that's a big piece of it, is the storage. The other thing I didn't realize, because my father-in-law is like an
Yeah,
engineer, a technical guy in the oil
sure.
industry his whole career, and he's retired now, but he's like, you know what, their demand for oil is so low, even if OPEC and all the different oil powers that be, that have oil wells in the ground that are pumping every day, say, okay, we need to cut production because no one's going to buy the oil and the price they're going to pay is so low. But here's the thing, I didn't know this. You can't just shut off an oil well like you can turn off a light switch. The pressure underground pushing that oil up is something that has to be slowly weaned down over a period of months, not
Months.
hours or days. So this is a global problem. But my point was not to get too much into the tech of that, but just enough to understand that, let's say everybody goes back to work, let's say safely in June, it starts to happen where businesses start to open up. A lot of businesses will not open up and are just gone. Others will reopen, rehire. Some people are going to go back to work. Okay, let's say that happens, but you're still not going to have the same amount of people driving that you did the day before the stay-at-home orders happened. And even more to the point, you're not going to have all of a sudden the volume of people starting to fly again that flew before. So
That's
even
correct.
when the airlines start to come back, what is it going to be? 40%, 50% of what it was before? There is going to be an adjustment and a new normal, if you will, in air quotes,
Sure.
of what the the travel that people need to go will be, and how much oil is needed. So you're not going to have things go back exactly the way they were.
Correct.
And um, so this economy is going to take a good 6 to 9 months probably to really return to whatever the new state of normal is at
That's
that time.
correct. I do training on conflict reduction, right? So, and then a lot of times I'll come into a situation where it might be post Katrina, where I worked with a school district because their students were traumatized by Katrina a year and a half before, and now they're in school and they're having troubles. How could you focus on a desk when you have the thought there might be a big storm and there might be somebody that's die or somebody's going to move away? How do you like rationally reset that up as a kid? The answer is you can't. It's hard to. You got to like it's a little bit of hard. It's you've got to train teachers to nurture them to re-engage and find their passion, re-engage and find their identity. Meanwhile, there was this traumatic thing, and hopefully they'll get it in their adult life. But you got to get them through this, right? Same thing for Flint, Michigan, with the water crisis. Yeah, I fly in there, train some people about how to communicate compassionately in order to manage emotions. Well, those environments, those cities went through a traumatic experience to trust that people around them are going to help them through a hurricane. People around them are going to help them through a water crisis. How do you restore trust? We have a nationwide Katrina right now, a nationwide Flint water crisis that psychologically people are not helping with the communication narrative. There's not an empathetic trust that we got this handled. We could get back to work with certainty and trust. No, it's get back to work and roll the dice on whether or not you're going to get sick. Go out and shop and roll the dice on whether or not you might get illness. And if you do, you got sick for the good of the economy. People will not buy that narrative.
Well,
They
and
just don't.
what's shocking is you have all these example of all these people protesting at the Pennsylvania State House this past weekend
In Michigan. Mm-hmm.
in Michigan for this exact reason,
Yes.
okay, saying that I don't believe the virus is real. I believe it, there were people actually saying that it
That's right.
was a hoax, or that,
Yes.
you know, that why should I have to stop working to save your life? If you're sick, you stay home. I mean, such really how do I say dispassionate, I mean, statements. I don't know what I'm searching
Yeah.
for the qualifier here, but
Yeah. No. Yeah.
very
It's not
selfish me
compassionate. Very
statements,
self.
not
Very me
we
sentences.
statements. And
Yeah.
then
Very
and
me.
so how what's also mind-boggling is you have the leader of our country, the president of the United States, who issued stay-at-home orders for recommendations, the guidance from the administration, from the federal government. He stood before the mic finally at some point in March, I don't remember when, and said, we're gonna, have recommend stay-at-home orders through April 30th, I think is what it was, or something like that. And then some states have pushed it beyond that. But so he's issuing the guidance from the federal level, and then he's tweeting, liberate Michigan, liberate, what are the other states? Virginia, and
Pennsylvania, or
one other
whatever. Yeah.
one, Midwestern state, that all have Democratic
Yeah.
governors.
Minnesota.
Minnesota, that's right. He's trying to stir the pot and telling people, no, no, don't listen to me as the leader of the country saying we're all going to stay at home. You guys are being oppressed. You need to be liberated. Go out and protest and get your life back. I mean, is I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but this is really the message that he's sending. How do you put that square peg in that round hole? I mean, my goodness.
Well, compassionately, if I wanted to be compassionate to President Trump, it would be he feels delighted and energized. He does. He feels delighted and energizing about meeting the need for connection with a person through the things he says and does. He will orchestrate being late just to create anticipation and uncertainty. He's done it throughout his career, late, not on time, things. Where is he? Where is he going to make it? Is his plane going to? Oh my gosh, he's so busy. He made time for us. He showed up. Gosh, we're really sorry that, Donald at his casino, my sister worked there at his casino. It's like it was orchestrated that he was going to be late. It was orchestrated that he wasn't going to be there on time, just so they could tell the audience. He's sitting in his office. Yeah, he's coming in from a very important business meeting in Florida, and he's flying in, and we're not sure if he's going to make it. We're not sure if he's going to make it. Of course, he makes it.
The uncertainty. Yeah.
The uncertainty. And that's a part of the dopamine sales cycle that is that is a part of these tweets. And if I were giving guidance and coaching to the press, start calling them on it. Oh, it looks like the president is looking to meet his need for connection and is supporting people's need for choice. Regrettably, it's at the expense of their health. Regrettably, it's at the expense of protection. Oh, he's looking to engage people through this strategy. And he even said it, fire Fauci. He even retweeted that.
Yeah.
And why did you do that? To stir the pot, he says. To stir the pot. To stir the pot? This is not a time to stir the pot. And he would stare right back at me and says, it's always time to stir the pot. That's his mindset, is to stir the pot. That's what a good marketing person does, is continuously stir the pot. So it becomes watch here, watch here, watch here. That's the job of a marketing person. Capture the eyeball. I mean, it's not like this is a mystery. Online, look at all the ads that are circling the content in the middle of the content you're trying to read. You have to skip over an ad in the middle of an article? Of course you do.
You do.
Because that is what, look here, click here. Is my ad attractive enough to you? Oh, you don't need it today? How about in 5 minutes? You might need it in 5 minutes. It's at the end of the article. You might have missed it up here. Why'd they click this one instead of this one? There's analytics about which one of the 4 of the same ads are on the page, which one gets clicked the most. Okay, let's put it in that position again next time. That's what marketing is, measure. And that's all he really just measures. Did you see my ratings? That is how you know that he's a marketing person that is measuring his indicator. And if the press wants truth and wants to do a better job, because we really started this with the
Chuck Todd, yeah.
Chuck Todd thing. We really started in there. If they want truth, well, be truthful about his strategy. Just spend time there. Be truthful about Pence's strategy. Oh, so you're really here on this show just to promote the president, and you're really going to give some messages of loyalty now. Is that correct? You've just taken out his next 3 sentences. Because if he says his next three sentences, you've just pulled the curtain back. Is literally...
He'd be demonstrating what you just laid out
demonstrating.
For him, right?
Yeah. So I'm guessing that you're really be here to promote. You're really here to really encourage, people to believe the message that you're saying, that there's a lot of good work being done here. Is that correct? You would like people not to look at the work that wasn't done. You would like us to look at things going forward. Yes, they're stuck because they don't have if you're telling them what their talking points are and asking them to be in agreement with their talking points, they don't have anything to talk about.
It really sort of disarms him, doesn't it?
Yeah, but you're being compassionate. You're not like being a jerk about it. You're just going like, yeah, I kind of see what you're doing. And I guess that's the way to do it. But we're not in the middle of selling a bar of soap or a widget. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Let me go and use some positive, real. We're not in the middle of selling an airline, Trump airline. We're not in the middle of selling Trump steaks. We're not in the middle of selling Trump vodka. We're not in the middle of selling Trump towers. We're not in the middle of selling. We're not selling something here. We're reporting on deaths, public service, protection. That's what we're reporting on.
Wow. And then if he says, well, no, we are selling, then he's really transparent as and exposed as selling
Yeah,
something if he
right.
counters
And
that narrative.
there's, yeah, it's just, and what happens is it's very discerning because you're being in agreement with the person that they come in an adversarial way. Don't answer that person's question. And if they get a very powerful question, just call the question fake. This You cannot be called fake news if you're empathetic to your guest, because you're not fake. You're in agreement with their motive. We gotta
Very
send this
interesting.
episode to Chuck Todd. We
We
should
really do.
send
Well,
this one to him, and because that's what he's missing. I mean, it's not like he's missing it. The head of the press corps, I watched him. I can't remember his name right now. The head of the press corps said it was saying the same thing. I was like, "Oh, that was a good question you asked." It was like, "No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It just had the ability for them to call you fake, but it was a real question. It was a real answer. No, that's not important. In sales, it doesn't matter if the person likes needs your thing. It just matters if they buy your thing. They don't need truth. They need to purchase this."
they don't understand, they being the journalists,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
media, they don't understand that what they've been trained to do is counterproductive right now, and
Right,
maybe will prove to be in general, down the road, that
right, right,
it's, if you want to create an enemy and create an adversarial situation, keep doing what you're doing, because you're
right.
doing a good job at that.
A good job in it. They are playing their role. They have been cast as the villain in this. They've been cast as the ones that are not giving the truth to people. Now, people don't like truth. That's a whole nother episode of why people don't want to really actually hear the truth straight out. Because when they hear truth, their habit brains going like, well, I don't want to believe that because then I have to change. See, so people don't really particularly like truth. And truth has got to be fed to them in small teaspoons in order for them to say, oh, yeah, this soup isn't that bad. Yeah, oh, yeah, I guess this is, oh, yeah, so it's not too hot. Oh, I guess I could adapt this new viewpoint. And that's called, creating societal change through, marketing a powerful idea. Like, let's pick one of these things. We've done this one before, which is designated driver. It's
Right.
not a thing. It's not a thing. It's not a thing until you make it a thing. Then when you
Right.
make it a thing, you got to promote the thing. And you got to promote the belief and the mindset that someone's drinking, and the numbers went down when they did it. Is that good for society? Yes. Did they trick society into do it psychologically? Yes. How did they do that? Put small messages, small teaspoons of a belief construct inside our consciousness. You can't say open back up again. It's even being sold terribly on that side because people are animals. Where the elephant has sat down. You've got to take a small stick to get him to stand back up again. not a governor that says, oh, I'm opening my state. What are you, the divided state of America? I mean, that's what he is. Basically, if a governor says, I'm opening up, he's saying to the rest of the states, screw you guys. Of course, if I were the governor on the states around him, I'd say, send the police to the border and stop everyone that's coming into this state, and we're going to test them right there. You want to be the divided states of America? Great. We're not letting your people or anybody travel through your state. Any governor could pull that sucker off. And all of a sudden it's like, we're not letting people come across this line unless there's things, because we're protecting our people and you are not protecting your people. So we're not letting your people come through us. Again, it's a different line, it's a different wall, it's a different border. But see, immediately, those governors are now out on the plank. They're walking the plank on the pirate ship. It's like you can't.
They've been, flirting with that plank anyway. That hanging themselves out there. Would you like to be the governor of South Dakota right now, who said, well, we're not doing a stay-at-home order, we don't have the problems you have in New York, and then Smithfield Farms, the pork processing plant, has 500 cases. It is the hottest of hot spots right now, because the company threatened their people to say, well, if you don't come to work and do your job, you won't have a job when you come back. And they forced them to work in conditions that were not safe. And they just made a huge, accelerator of COVID-19 right there.
They just grew it. They just petri dish it.
And now the governor there is having to face reality of how bad this is.
That's how bad it is. Yeah. So, Tom, the best part about this discussion, because it's such a rich and a full discussion about how can we use language in order to get people to be enlisted through a common value, protection, safety, narrative. Now, the truth of how this thing spreads and how it works, we need the truth of a very important business concept called best practices. What nations did this best? That's the question everyone should ask and state. Listen, we've really taken some great ideas from the things that took place in South Korea, and we adjusted them and made some improvements to make it better for us. Still your idea, but you're taking that idea and moving over here.
Yeah, you improved upon it. Isn't that the American way?
So improve upon it. I mean, a part of our psyche and identity wants to be the ones that's the innovator. The other part is okay to be the synthesizer, integrated of best practices. But they're regrettably, both sides are struggling in their messaging. They're still trying to do, very much push marketing, and they're not trying to do empathetic engagement. So let's talk next time. Let's talk about the difference between push marketing and empathetic engagement as a way to how truth is, forced in a direction, and that's called, the state media mindset, whether it's Russia or Fox News, to put an interesting comparison next to each other, or what is empathetic engagement, what it takes to stand there at a podium and say, listen, the world's going to change a little bit, and you might go into a restaurant and there's a person at the door that's going to take your temperature, and when you come in, the waiter or waitress is going to have a mask on, and there's going to be a menu that is going to be disposable, and they're going to clean these environments so it's safe for you to go there. That's the reality, and you got to sell that.
Wow.
You got to sell that. You got to sell that narrative. That's what it's going to look like if you'd like to go to a restaurant.
All right. Well, let's do that. I enjoy that. We'll look forward to that.
Great conversation, Tom. Looking forward to the next one.
Thanks, Bill. Me too. I enjoyed it. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.